Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today I am chatting with Suzanne Plahm. She is the Director of Collegiate and Field Marketing at Celsius. Welcome, Suze.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
Super excited to chat with you today. Suze has quite the experience in the beverage industry. She's worked at Red Bull, done work for Anheuser-Busch, and now is over at Celsius, which recently acquired Alani. So lots of experience in beverages. So really excited to talk through your career journey. Before we jump into all of that good stuff, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Suzanne Plahm. Really, what I do is kind of expect the unexpected when it comes to the CPG world. I am our Director of Field and Collegiate Marketing. So what that really means is we are driving trial to consumers. So really making those one-on-one engagements and experiences very memorable so that everyone who tries the product then becomes a fan of the product and the brand. Outside of work, I would say I'm a dog mom. So I like to make sure the dogs and kids are supported. And then outside of that, I'm a Orange Theory enthusiast. So definitely like to have a Celsius before reaching any of those benchmarks. That's a little bit about me.
I love that. So obviously I kind of mentioned you've been in the beverage industry for pretty much your whole career, which honestly I find quite rare. I don't think I've ever interviewed someone on the podcast that's exclusively worked in that industry. Is that something that you knew you wanted to be in? Is that something that happened on accident?
Yeah, so kind of a funny story. I went to Columbia College in Chicago, which is an art university, and my original major in college was sign language interpretation with a minor in education. So I always thought that I would be an interpreter for maybe theater or, different news stations. And then I was introduced to the world of Red Bull by their what they used to call their wings team. So someone that drove around that Mini Cooper and handed me an ice cold can. And I thought, wow, what a cool college job. So I ended up applying and working for them. I changed my major pretty quickly. I realized that marketing was something that I had never thought of, but really was passionate about. So that's kind of how I got into the industry, as well as taking on a part-time role. I also was a bartender and I was a waitress. So always loved working with people, especially when they were, enjoying a beverage of choice.
Love that. Okay, so I know college ambassador programs have grown a ton. They are so much more popular. I recently went and spoke at UT, and I was just blown away by their I don't even know, they had a merch table at the event essentially of all of these brands that have a presence now on college campus. But when I was in college, it was not like that. However, Red Bull Wings was the ambassador program, right? They pretty much, I feel paved the way for so many other brands who later came on and started to do collegiate programs. And there was I definitely remember that being a cool thing to do on campus. So can you talk about that experience of being on the Wings team and kind of maybe what you learned from it?
Yeah, so the Wings team is such a special program at Red Bull. I made lifelong friends. But yeah, it was truly one of those jobs where not only did you activate on campus, but you also activated out in the field as well. So you could be sampling somebody in the library at your campus, or you could be passing a can out to somebody on their way to work. So it definitely gave real world experience, but also making special connections on campus as well.
Do you think that, for somebody right now who's potentially considering doing a college ambassador program, do you feel like it's something that is worth their time?
Yes. Tons of brands are always looking for bright different audiences, especially in the college years. One thing that I always like to share is that when it comes to being a college student, right, that's kind of the first time you're really on your own, making your own decisions, your own purchasing habits. So for example, let's say, I don't know, you use Tide Pods to wash your clothes, and then you are given a sample of a different brand. You may say, all right, it's a free sample, I'll try it out. you then wash your clothes, you dry them, and you're like, wow, this smells amazing, or this is so soft. And that's kind of that pivotal moment where you say, all right, do I switch? Do I convert? And a lot of those things are based on, right, as well as kind of influence. So I think college jobs, especially in like that CPG world, are really great opportunity, not only to obviously learn from bigger brands, but also connecting with the students, and helping them make the choices that'll help them, in their further careers after college.
Is there anything else you can share? Because I know obviously you work on the collegiate side now in your current role, and like for example, I think like Poppy is a huge example of really, really getting involved at the campus level. And you're just, again, I just feel like this really did not exist like 5 years, not even 5 years ago, just like how many brands. So what about this, I don't know, like this like time period, or like, because brands are investing, tons and tons of money into this. So what have brands kind of discovered that has made them really, really start to grow and invest in these ambassador programs?
Yeah, well, I think content creation is something huge. A lot of college students get their information from TikTok or Instagram, and they're sharing their experiences, and they're able to get more of that local reach. So I think one, the college influence is a lot more impactful than sometimes these bigger named influencers. But on top of that, I think when it comes to the college programs and how much brands are investing into them, is that unlike 20 years ago, where people really loved things, our Gen Z community really loves experiences. So if they're able to enjoy a product and watch their favorite artist on stage and also get like a reusable tote, they're not only consuming that product, but they're also having a really great brand memory. So there's a lot more to it, but I also think that like any brand can also have a college program. When I was at an agency a few years back, one of our clients was the Wall Street Journal, which right may not be as sexy as some other brands, but I absolutely loved their program, and having that resource for colleges, having a true news source to get their information. I think there's just so much opportunity when it comes to the college community.
How about on the brand side? Like, what have you found that students are looking for in terms of them being excited and interested about joining ambassador program for, like, for example, a brand that's maybe not as quote unquote sexy as some other brand?
Yeah, I think they really want it to be authentic and also be really passionate about that brand. So if it was a brand, I'm gonna make one up. Charlie 123, which we'll call it a soda. Don't worry, that's not my password for anything, guys. If it was a soda, but maybe there was like tons of sugar in it, and maybe it wasn't recyclable, and maybe, it didn't live up to the standards of this kind of healthy lifestyle that everyone's looking towards. Maybe there's tons of artificial dyes in it, right? So I think that's also something that, if you are on a different route in your life, and you're looking for certain things to incorporate to your everyday routine, then you're not going to be, as eager or excited or as successful to represent a brand that you personally don't believe in. So I think there's always kind of a balance between brands and what you can and can't be passionate about. Maybe you are in a long-term relationship, but then you are an ambassador for a dating app, right? It's like,
Yeah.
does it really work right now? It's like, maybe I met my person on this dating app. Maybe I didn't. So like, how can I really know if I didn't truly experience the real connection?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's just something that I've just been having my eye on because I've just seen so many of these programs that come into place. And again, I was just like so shocked. I went to go. It was like a small event, and there's just like tables of product. I'm like this is so honestly so cool. I was like, I wish when I was in college I had all of this opportunity. But it's really interesting to see that brands are investing in being in front of college students and consumers like at this age where I'm assuming you're in college, you're making a lot of important decisions about your identity and maybe kind of having that right timing is making you potentially like a lifelong drinker of Celsius or
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think too, obviously, like the world is continuously changing, but when it comes to kind of the corporate world, it's definitely evolved where, you may have somebody that just graduated college at the boardroom and pitching the new idea, whether it be a new flavor or maybe a new concept for an activation, right? So it's really, really important to have all different ages part of the conversations because for certain products, right, you're going to be able to gravitate towards certain groups, but an example like Celsius, it's like everybody needs energy, whether you're studying, you're working out, you're commuting. We all know being an adult is like exhausting. So how do we make sure that we're able to kind of play in all of these areas? And we wouldn't be able to do it without a diverse group of employees.
I was wondering if you could share a little bit of light on what field marketing is, because I know it's something that's a bit different from maybe traditional digital marketing.
Yeah, I might be biased, but I think field marketing is probably the coolest department you can be in. But to kind of keep it simple, is our field marketing program is really, or not just ours at Celsius, but a lot of programs, their field marketing is really strategizing to understand how do we reach people at the right place at the right time and during those kind of consumption occasions or usage occasions. So for example, maybe your market is Chicago and you know that Lollapalooza is one of the biggest moments in the city. So you may position your brand where consumers are either trying it or seeing it or even interacting with somebody who's from the organization to then have kind of that memorable experience. Specifically for Celsius and Red Bull, we are product focused. So a lot of it is driving that trial and overcoming barriers. So maybe you sampled somebody and they said, this is actually a little too sweet. You can take that feedback and say, oh, we actually have these different flavors that aren't as sweet. We may have somebody that says, no, thank you, I don't want one. And instead of saying, okay, have a great day, we're going to say, why? Can I ask why? And they may say, it's got too much sugar. And that's when we can then educate them. We actually have a sugar-free option, or all of our portfolio is sugar-free. Or they may say, I really don't like carbonated beverages. And at Celsius, we have fizz-free beverages. So it kind of, again, is like having that one-on-one interaction with the consumer in real time, and then being able to then educate them, overcome their barriers, and then lastly, have them try it. So when they become a consumer, then eventually, when they need that moment of need, they'll remember the functionality of our product and then become a customer and purchase it for the next time.
Incredible. So I know you were kind of talking to me before we started recording about that your job requires a lot of travel, and that you get to go to a lot of new places, which I think would be exciting for somebody. I always say, like, not all roles are for everybody, but it sounds like the field marketing career path also has that ability for you to not just like be in the office all the time because you're getting to go out on site. But do you think that field marketing is, how much do you think it leads towards like marketing and sales? Is it a mix of the two? Or kind of how would you describe it?
Yeah. So field marketing definitely collaborates with sales really closely. We want to make sure that we're, hand in hand with our sales team. So something simple could be if we have a certain flavor, and maybe it's not being sold in stores yet, or maybe it hasn't been rolled out to that certain zip code. It wouldn't make sense for us to sample there because now that person can't go and purchase it. So having a really collaborative environment, and communicating kind of what the needs are on both sides is super important. But I like to say field marketing's a lot more like not as traditional. It's not a 9 to 5. It's truly when the market has these activities where we can capitalize on. So some of my team members may have Monday as an admin day, and Tuesday and Wednesday they may take off because they know that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they're going to be working, a festival, or they're going to have lots of shifts going out, or maybe there's a product delivery. It's kind of nice in the sense of having that balance. And then also, I would say every day is not the same. Really not running into the same consumers. You're not having the same conversations. And I would say too, like having the impact and being able to share it with the sales team is so important. We've actually had some of our feedback from consumers given back to our innovation team, where, for example, more people want to try fizz free, right? And it's like, oh, really? I didn't realize that there was a lot of people who didn't want as much carbonation. And from that feedback alone, we're creating new lines. So I think that's where field marketing and sales definitely collaborates. But yeah, hope that answered your question.
Yeah, also hearing like the week in the life I think is really helpful. One of my goals always with the podcast is to just like bring more awareness to different career paths that people might not always be aware of or not really understand what they look like. So I think that was like honestly perfect for somebody who maybe has seen this job title on LinkedIn, but like not really known if it was for them. I think that hopefully now knowing more about what it entails will help somebody maybe be open to going into field marketing.
Yeah, and I think field marketing sometimes has different titles within different organizations. So, field marketing, maybe for a chain restaurant, is going to look different than a CPG brand. So, I always say look at the job descriptions and never sell yourself short. If you're looking at it and you're like, I don't have all these qualifications, still apply. That's something that I like to encourage everyone is don't sell yourself short. And, as long as you're passionate, that's something that really resonates with hiring managers. And, I think skill sets can always be taught, but, passion and being really driven is something that I look for personally.
Yeah. And so within your career, I think it's really inspiring to see that you started as a brand ambassador and then you really, really moved your way up from, to doing field marketing, to just even within that role of moving up the career ladder to obviously where you are now, being director of Collegiate and field marketing, which is so impressive. What do you think you have learned within your career, either within the CPG industry or just within the field marketing industry, that you feel like has really allowed you to have so much growth and success in your career?
Yeah, one thing that I live by, and if I were to ever get a tattoo, I think it would be this, is just expect the unexpected. There's always going to be curveballs. Things are never going to go exactly how we write them out in a program plan or, based on schedules, whether it be weather or traffic or somebody not being able to show up. Being able to stay kind of cool, collected, in kind of those high stressful environments is something that has definitely kind of taught me now to have a bit more of backup plans. So never putting out bad juju out there, but it's like, all right, if we know we need to staff 4 people, let's actually staff 5, just in case something happens, or if we have an event that's outside and we know that could possibly rain, let's make sure that we have, tents and we have sandbags. And if the event needs to be canceled, what is something else that we can do afterwards? So it's kind of, again, I don't want to say like being a wedding planner where you have to, make sure that you can kind of be a little bit fluid, but that's probably helped me the most, as well as I always tell my team, don't react, but respond. So if you hear something or something makes you really excited or really upset, making sure that you're staying professional and taking a beat, it's like, all right, this just happened. Instead of saying the first thing that comes to my mind, let me take a second and really think this through and then respond.
I like that. Yeah. Or wait, I was about to say react, don't respond, but it's the opposite. Respond, don't react. I like that. And then I'm also curious, so I know you mentioned that field marketing overlaps with sales. Does it also overlap with like experiential or event marketing as well?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Field marketing, I think, really touches every part of the business. So whether it's supporting our sports pillars or experiential, like music festivals, one pillar that we really work with at Celsius is our fitness pillar. So we've got different accounts that sells Celsius. So being able to, do staff energizers or do different demos so that consumers then can try the product at that place that they're going to every week to work out. And then the next time that there isn't a demo, they'll then purchase. We also work with our trade show teams. We work with all different types of departments within the organization. So I think it's kind of nice because you get to see how your role is really impacting and increasing our sales based on these interactions and as well as marketing support.
Yeah, it sounds like a really great career path if you kind of want to touch other teams, or I think especially I know a lot of people really love the event side of marketing or the experiential side, so I feel like this would be a really great path for that.
Yeah. And I think too, like our social teams and influencers, like everyone really does work together. I know at Celsius that TikTok is a lot more based of our HQ employees. So it's really fun to see, somebody from finance, be part of that culture. Whenever I see somebody from my team, I'm like so excited, but then I'm also like, please don't leave my department. You're so good at this, but please don't leave me yet. So it's definitely fun to be part of the entire organization.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so now in your current position as Director of Collegiate and Field Marketing, can you share a little bit about what, a week in the life looks like in that position?
Oh man, like I said, every day is definitely different. I currently oversee both the US and Canada. So overall, I would say it's really aligning on our priorities as an organization. So one week we could be launching a new SKU, which a SKU is like a flavor or a size of a can. The next week we may have a big bet. So for example, this week we've got Formula One in Miami. So it's kind of all hands on deck there. Other weeks it could be putting together, budgets and understanding what we need to pitch for the next year. And then also a lot of the things that we do too, especially on the field side, is having conversations with the local community, understanding how we can, partner with different run clubs or street festivals, or maybe it's a new grand opening for a gym or for a retail location. So every day is pretty different, but I would say most of my week when I'm not traveling looks like a lot of meetings, but a lot of fun too. So it's good to have kind of the balance and again, not having my head stuck in an Excel sheet every day. So
And so, one other thing within field marketing that sometimes I struggle grasping is just like you mentioned, like you are going to be, there's a new gym. So, I'll say, for example, in Austin, there's a new Lifetime opening up on South Congress. Or not on South Lamar. Everyone's really excited about it. So, let's say you guys, Celsius decides to be there for the opening day and, do some field marketing, have a little setup or activation there. It is hard for me to wrap my head around, like you're saying, you're managing Canada and US, and there are so many cities across US. There are likely so many gyms that are opening. There are likely so many run clubs, so many festivals. As now I know you're in this higher level position, like how is the thought process of like thinking about where you should be? Obviously knowing that like the world is massive and
yeah.
you only have so many people on your team.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do not know what's going on at all times. I don't think anyone could truly know. However, I have a really, really strong team of regional managers who are broken up by different divisions. And the way that we work with our teams is we kind of divide the country into these divisions. So if you are owning the, let's say, South Division, or really collaborating with everyone who's part of that division, with fitness, with the festival team, with the sports team. And a lot of us create calendars, so it kind of helps us look at the full year. But yeah, when it comes to like knowing everything that's going on, we don't. But that's where we really rely on the field managers because they are truly based in those cities. So they're the ones that are, I like to say like the CEO of their city, the ones having the conversations, making those authentic relationships. And again, like I don't know everything. So someone may say, oh my gosh, like the rodeo is the biggest thing in Houston and everyone goes to it. Like I'm a city girl, so I'm like, oh, should we be there? And then you hear from the sales team and you hear from retailers that it's so important. So it's definitely not a one-woman job. I really, really rely on my team, and I really trust them and their decisions.
Yeah, okay, because I wanted to say, yeah, there's just so many things that are going on in the world. It
Yeah.
would be impossible. And then how about for somebody who, maybe is in college and wants the opportunity to stand out for an ambassador program? I know sometimes they can be a bit competitive. Do you have any advice to share there?
Yeah, so again, like I said, if you are looking to be an ambassador on a college job, you do not need to have a degree or a focus in marketing or advertising or social media. It's really standing out as a candidate. So it really depends on the application process. If it's just, submitting your resume and a cover letter, do the cover letter. Tell them why you are the best person for the job. And I know we all love ChatGPT, and it's definitely a great tool, but like stand out. If you have a story to tell, or one thing that I always love is when somebody says, whether it's an application or maybe a screening, is how they tell me how much they love the product or the very first time they experienced it, or maybe they were sampled by somebody from our team and it just really left an impression on them. That's something that a resume isn't really going to show. Doing that, and then also LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. I actually got my role at Celsius by sending a direct message to now my current boss.
Oh my gosh.
So I think that too is like making sure that, you're not only believing yourself, but also knowing like what you can contribute to an organization as well.
Can you tell me about how you got your role at Celsius by DMing your boss? I have to know more.
Yeah. So obviously, I was really, 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 really passionate about the energy category, and there was a college manager role open, and I applied for it. However, the role was based in Boca, and I was unable to move. And so I was like I was really bummed. I was like, I know I can do this role. I know that this is the job for me. And so I took a few days after I kind of got the rejection and I was like, all right. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna give out without a fight.
Wait,
Give
so
up.
you applied and got rejected?
Yes,
Oh
yes.
my gosh, that makes the story even better. Okay, continue.
Yeah. I was like, you won't move here. Like, sorry, like this job's in the office.
Yeah.
And it's such a very unique role. And I knew that I had the experience not only from Red Bull, but I also worked at a boutique agency that focused only on college programs. So I worked on Bud Light Seltzer. There was a Babe Wine, Carbach, Ranch Water, Natty Light, which is one of my
Oh my
favorite
gosh.
programs that I worked on. Yeah, there was a ton. So I ended up messaging my now boss, kind of giving him an elevator pitch of just telling him why I'm like the best person for the role. And I told them to have a great semester. I didn't say like, I would love to speak with you for 15 minutes. I kind of was just like, here's an elevator pitch on how I really am not only passionate about the program, but how I will make an impact. And he then messaged me back being like, you free to chat? And ultimately, at the end, they created a role for me, and I actually became our senior manager of national field marketing. And after being in that role for a year, I took on the college department. So it was definitely, not your traditional way. However, I feel like I hear stories like this all the time. I had somebody in a past role drop off a cake, and the cake was actually their resume, you know?
Oh my gosh.
So things like that, right? I'm not saying everyone go buy, a cake and print your resume on it, but being able to stand out is something that sounds so simple, but it really does like leave a lasting impression on who you're going to be working with.
That is incredible. And it's actually so funny you mentioned this because I was actually just talking about this subject yesterday in our accelerator about how everybody thinks that if you're going to send a message to the CEO that like they're never going to see it. Everybody's doing that. Everybody's sending it. But like the reality is that they're not. Is like you think that everybody's maybe like following up or sending a message, but like most people aren't, and that you'd be so surprised at who's actually going to respond to you. So I love that. I love that you got rejected and you were still like, no, like I'm not taking no for an answer. That's so incredible to hear. I also want to know if you have any tips for somebody who's looking to maybe do something similar on their job search for what to include in the elevator pitch to make sure it stands out and it doesn't just get disregarded.
Yeah, I think this goes back to really knowing what you're passionate about. So if it's not the CPG world, maybe it's, I don't know, IT. Being able to share your experience and your skill sets is one thing, but really sharing on how that company has impacted your decisions in life. So maybe it's IT for Mac. I don't know. It's like I was born out of the womb and I had an iPad in my hand. I don't know. Just making sure that you're staying still true to yourself, but also letting them know that you are a true product and brand user. So I think that's really important. And then I know I know LinkedIn kind of creates messages for you. So making sure that you're not being like generic with it. Sometimes I get messages where it's like, hey, I would love to get into field marketing. Do you have 15 minutes? It's like, I don't have 15 minutes. But if someone were to tell me, like, oh my gosh, I ran into the Celsius vehicle and I was heading to the gym and somebody gave me an ice cold can and holy cow, you know, Arctic Vibe is my favorite flavor, and I am just so passionate, and I want to be able to give this experience to other people. I'll be like, yeah, girl, let's hop on a call. Let's talk about how we can do this together. So I truly think, there's a little bit of a balance of being professional, but then also just really being real.
Yeah, and this also goes to like why you cannot use ChatGPT for stuff like this, because ChatGPT is going to give you, and again, I see it too. People message me all the time, and it's so easy to tell when somebody's just sending one message to like everybody versus when somebody is actually messaging you and they actually care about you. Or like for me, it's like, do you actually care about Case Society, or did you just use some bot to pull the brand name and put it into a message? And so whether like that a specific story about the brand that they work at is huge, looking at their LinkedIn and being like, I saw you went to this university, I also went to this university, or I saw that, so that way it's showing that like there's intention behind it versus, oh yeah, this person's just reaching out to anybody.
Totally. And sometimes there may not even be a job open, but if you really want to work for a certain brand, sending somebody a message saying, hey, in the future, if there's anything opening, maybe a social media coordinator, or if you guys are ever looking to hire someone for graphic design, I'm really looking to, grow my portfolio, and, here's my portfolio, and looking forward towards the next product launch, right? It's like never asking, but you never know kind of what those messages can turn into.
Yeah. And also that's sometimes too, building the relationship before the job is actually open. That way when the job does open, you've already built a relationship, so maybe you can ask because it's not your first interaction with that person. You've already messaged them before in a more genuine way, and then when the job does open, then you can kind of feel like you have that relationship to then go and ask maybe for a referral.
Totally. And I think too, a lot of people in the industry, they want to see not only their teams, but college graduates, break in and give them that opportunity. And a lot of times, if there isn't something open on my team, I always reach out to my network. So whether they be, I know we connected through a past colleague that worked at Red Bull, and then the agency I worked at, and now she's at Liquid Death. So it's like being able to kind of share those, resumes, or kind of understand like what they may have open, because it can become back like full circle. Our mutual contact at Liquid Death actually took one of my best employees. She didn't take.
No.
But we hopped on a call, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm so proud of this person. Like you're giving her the opportunity to like get to the next step in her career. It's one of those like proud mama moments, but then you're also like, this is awesome. Like I want my team to grow. I want them to have these experiences. And who knows, maybe she'll be at that company for a year or 2 years or 10 years or 5 minutes, and then, takes all those experiences and comes back to us. So that's something too, is never burn bridges. You never know when you might end up working with someone. You may have a client, and then 5 years later, that client may become your client. So just really being open to everyone is something that I've always been, really focused on.
Yeah, and going back to the same thing of like, you never know when a connection is going to come back around, or when a relationship is going to, maybe, yeah, for example, this employee leaves your team, but you have no idea if they could come back. Like, I think in your journey, you left Red Bull and then came back, right? Or no?
Yeah. I was at Red Bull, and then I went to an agency, and then I went back to Red Bull. I had a few roles. I was in sales, I was in marketing. I actually went to California twice for Red Bull. So again, like being able to be open, and also, keeping those strong relationships is so important. like I said, like my lifelong friends, and we still share not, our strategies or, top secret organizational things, but it's so fun to like continuing having conversations about, the business and where, the world is kind of changing and how that impacts our consumers, our customers, etc.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, Suze, this has been so incredible getting to talk through your journey and have you just open the doors into what field marketing looks like. I honestly didn't know a lot of what we've chatted about today. So thank you so much for coming on Marketing Girly and sharing your story. Do you have any last advice you'd like to share with other marketing girlies?
Yeah. Um, my biggest advice is like speak up, even if you're the youngest or newest person in the room. You know, your perspective matters, and especially in the CPG world, like understanding people and their everyday lives, like that's our chances to, or that's the chance where you guys are able to kind of share, what that target consumer is. So that, and I would say try to learn both creative and number sides. Great marketing is really not just about ideas, but it's also about knowing what's working. And just always be curious. Talk to people on other teams. Don't be afraid to try things before you feel 100% ready. And I also would say is when you see your leadership team or your colleagues having, different conversations, ask, hey, can I sit in on this conversation? I just want to be able to kind of, be a sponge and learn as much as I can from all sides of the business. And then my last thing, because this was really hard for me to grasp, is sometimes we don't get the job that we're looking for, or we may not get that promotion we're looking for. And sometimes we may have to go from, you know, a manager role to another manager role. And, it's like, oh, this is so unfair. But being able to really be more well rounded is so important. One of my mentors had told me, like, I know you're really passionate about this, but if you become stronger in this area, you're then going to be able to take on the next, career path. So if you're not really creative, take an improv class. Or if you are really bad at numbers, just start playing in Excel. You never know when, you have to wear different hats. Especially in field marketing, I always tell my teams, you're a coach, you're a manager, you're a leader, you're a mentor, you're a friend. And sometimes you are, the warehouse manager, or you are making the ice runs, or you need to, manage your budgets. So being able to be, not only flexible, but also adaptable is so important. Things are always going to change. You may be used to, one way of working, and then somebody new comes in and changes things up. I feel like the college generation now is going to be such a big positive impact for new organizations, because you guys have already been so adaptable. I always think it's funny. My grandma's on Facebook, she's on Instagram, and whenever there's a new update, it seems like it's the end of the world. But we always adapt, right? We always are like, oh, this is the new feature, and it may seem like it's really complicated and challenging, but it's not. You just have to kind of be open to it.
Yeah, I love that. What incredible advice to end this episode. Thank you again, Suze, for coming on Marketing Girly.
Of course. Thank you guys so much.